Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. We've got Charles Odom here with us today. Charles is the founder of Painted Circle. Charles, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here.
Thanks, man. I'm so excited to be here.
It's going to be fun. We had a conversation a few weeks ago. We were actually going to record and we had some tech issues and we said, oh, let's come back and do it another time. And then we went on and spoke for an hour and a half, I think, not recorded. Learned quite a bit about you on that call. We're going to try and get back to some of that stuff because it was fascinating and just really, really happy to have you here. Charles, let's start with, give us the, 30-second, 60-second elevator pitch. What is Painted Circle? What should our listeners know about that before we get into your story?
Yeah, great. Painted Circle. We're building this as an alternative to your traditional big box mass market travel websites. And I'm sure we're going to go into all kinds of detail about what's good about those guys, what's wrong about them, and why we're trying to do something different. My goal is that for all those people out there wanting to travel in a more ethical and intentional kind of way and spend your money in a way that aligns with your values, we're building a platform to make that possible. So I look forward to discussing all the nitty-gritty details of it. It's definitely a work in progress and something that I'm excited for people to join us on this journey. It's kind of an experiment to see what we can do, what the results are, and we're just getting started. So it's an exciting time.
Very cool. We're going to dig into it. And before we go any further, when you say those guys, those big websites, we've got a lot of tour operators have been on the show that would kind of fall into the category of big operators like Intrepid, G Adventure, stuff like that. But I don't think that's who you're talking about when you say the big guys. So let's clarify that.
Yeah. And another thing that I'm excited to talk about is I used to be one of these tour operators myself. Most of my time working in tourism has been with the tour operator in Germany. So that was me in my last role, working on the ground with guests. And so when we're talking about big mass market travel sites, what we're talking about here are booking engines, marketing sites. We know them as TripAdvisor, Viator, Get Your Guide, Booking.com. These are really great companies, but it's time that we have an alternative. And it'll be good for us to talk about when we should be booking travel through those big sites and when we should be looking to book travel in a different kind of way. Because a lot of travelers don't realize what happens behind the scenes. And so that's what we're trying to educate people on and make available to them.
So I wanted to make sure we got to that real quick so people kind of understood what the scope of the conversation, because this is a popular topic right now. You and I are both in a lot. I think that's how we connected was probably through, LinkedIn and the communities there of tour operators. And there's a whole lot of conversation around, working with the tour operators and how to find alternative ways to connect with potential clients and that type of thing. So that's exciting. And I really, really want to kind of figure out how the heck did you get here? Where did you get from where you were to where you are now? You mentioned working for a tour operator in Germany, but let's go back a little further and delve into your childhood and see what sparked all this stuff for you. So how far back do we go?
Back in the black and white world, I guess.
Yeah, me and you and I both.
Yeah, it's not that bad, but I do tell people that I'm like a geriatric millennial because I'm an 82 baby. Uh-huh. So I think we were the first vintage of the millennial. So, I am a millennial in so many ways, but I'm also very old school in some other ways. It's kind of that weird hybrid crossover situation. I grew up in the United States. So I grew up here. Luckily, I was with a family that really appreciated travel, and we were never very well off or anything. I mean, we went without so that we would have money to travel. And, I think kind of the typical American thing is that all your trips kind of get more and more spectacular over time because you're
Hmm.
trying to like build momentum.
Hmm.
And so we definitely went from your traditional, let's stay close to home, or let's go to the mountains, let's go to the beach, and then, let's go to a national park, let's go to the Grand Canyon, let's go to the other side of the country. And, it just kind of expanded from there. And as a kid, I was fortunate to grow up with parents who really appreciated that.
What part of the States did you grow up in?
I was born in South Carolina,
In South
in
Carolina. Okay.
Columbia, which
All right.
is probably the hottest place on earth.
Wait a minute, Charles.
We'll debate.
I'm
There
I'm
is
sitting in Arizona right now. It's August 12th in Arizona.
Go to South Carolina in the summer, Columbia, the humidity, the heat, it's
Oh,
oppressive.
that's true.
I grew up there, and I think that's actually one of the reasons why I appreciated traveling so much is that we would usually leave during the summertime and try to do something. I had a really close relationship with my grandparents, and on my dad's side of the family, they were big into like camping. And at one point, they even had a camper van that they got in retirement. And so we would do these different trips. And part of my family lived in Santa Cruz, which is just south of San Francisco. And so we would have this target, of let's get in the van and let's go.
That's a long
And
trip.
so it's a long trip, and we did
Yeah.
this several times. And so each time, like over many years during the summer, and each time we would try to do a slightly different route
Hmm.
so that we would see different things. And it's kind of funny, like even just this past week, somehow this really obscure place called the Corn Palace in South Dakota came
I
up in
was
conversation.
I
And
was
I was
gonna
like, I've
ask
been
you.
there.
I was going to ask you because I spent my summers traveling with my dad, and I'm from Wyoming, so we did that cross country route several times through the Dakotas and Nebraska, and yeah, the Corn Palace in Mitchell, South Dakota, I believe, is where the
Yeah.
Corn Palace is. And there were other places. Do you remember like Reptile Gardens?
I
In
haven't.
No, you, you didn't see that. Or Waldrug, South Dakota. There's the signs every, a mile and a half or 300 miles
Okay.
until you get to Waldrug, South. I think
No,
that's
I
South
don't
Dakota.
remember that one, but it sounds
But
pretty amazing.
yeah, the Corn Palace. Did you stop and actually go look at the Corn Palace?
We did.
Yeah,
Yeah. Went
pretty
inside.
corny, wasn't it?
It totally was.
Very corny.
Yeah.
Let's tell our listeners what the Corn Palace is from your recollection or from your interpretation.
Well, my recollection from being very young when we went there is that it's a building that it was something else first that was disused, and it had been turned into a bit of a cultural showcase slash convention center slash meeting place, but it was a very large building, which under the surface, which we can literally say like under the corn,
Hmm.
is like a really nondescript kind of building, and it's been adorned with all kinds of corn on the outside of it, all kinds of shapes, colors, sizes, like all over it. And it's this very intricate design. It almost reminds you, if you've seen some of the architecture in like Brighton in the UK, where they've got some of these convention centers that are all like palatial looking and everything, and it's just totally out of place. It's kind of that same thing. It's almost like medieval castle meets Victorian like charm meets antebellum, kind of like all put together. It's this
Would
very
you use
unusual thing.
would you use the term a mosaic, like murals, like the
Uh,
walls, let's say the exterior of the building is covered in
it's
corn
designed.
mosaic, I guess, like you said, different, like the corn cobs. I'll take the corn cobs of different colors, slice them in half, and glue them to the wall in a mosaic manner to create some sort of design. And my understanding is they do a new one every year. Like they strip off the old corn and do a totally new design each year
It's
with new murals
perishable.
and stuff.
So I mean, you do.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
we would see these like weird things like that. And I don't know, like when I think back, my childhood was mostly about travel. That's most of what my parents spent money on
Hmm.
was on travel. And so we got to see things like that. And it's a perfect example of some place that's totally ridiculous but it's amazing how many times it has come up in conversation since then. And when you have these toys or plastic, junk that you have as a kid, how much of that do you really reflect back on over your lifetime? And yet there are these things that we had. We were able to go to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and just because we took the time. And my parents were both educators, which meant that during the summer we did actually have some time to spare. And so we did a lot of that. And as I got a little bit older, when I was more like 9, 10 years old,
That's
when we
Charles,
started traveling more.
if you don't mind, I want to ask you, do you remember your first outing? What's the first memory you have of having an adventure? And I'm not sure how to define that right now, but what's the first thing that pops into your head is like that first memory? It
I
wasn't the
do
Corn
remember.
Palace. Oh, you do?
No.
Okay.
Oh, shucks. No,
Chuck, that was good.
no. My first memory, and I do think this is going to be really interesting for us to loop this back into what I'm doing now with Painted Circle, because so much of what I do now is about ethical travel, sustainable travel, businesses that are really using their energy and their income for these positive things. But that's not necessarily how I grew up traveling. We didn't have so many options out there, and there wasn't as much transparency about what goes on behind the scenes. And one of the places I loved as a kid was, of course, Disney World. And I think that is one of my first adventures that I remember, because the first time that I went, I was 2 years old, like 2.5, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it because I traveled on that trip for the first time by plane.
Oh, okay.
And we couldn't afford for everyone to travel by plane. So I went with my grandmother. And so my grandmother and I flew to Orlando and met my parents there, who drove in the car. But they wanted me to have that experience of flying on the plane. And so I have it somewhere. I'm sure I've posted it at some point or another. I have this great picture of me and my grandmother at the airport getting ready to take that flight. And it was like, that was the beginning. And I do remember it because I remember being on the plane. I remember flying through the clouds the first time and like that experience. And I still have vivid memories of that. Not of the whole trip, but like you have these little vignettes, like splashes that you've got that are just really vivid. And what comes before and after, I've forgotten, but I have those mental images. And I think that was definitely the first adventure that I had, for which I have really strong memories. And I think that trip and that picture that I have really sums it up, that this was something that we did as a family. Everyone was smiling and happy, and it was that idea of, hey, this is what this type of trip can be. You can have a traditional vacation. It's about fun. It's about family. And then over the years, that's where I've started to see, through working in travel for so long, that that's just one type of travel that we can do. And there's lots of other travel as well that has a completely different purpose and a different impact for ourselves and for the world that we visit. And so
we're going to dig into your philosophies and thoughts behind that. And you also mentioned, you were starting to mention something about 9. You started doing something.
We started going abroad.
Oh, okay.
And getting out of the US. And one of the first really big trips that we did was to Africa. And I went with my dad. It's a big one. And I did that when I was 10. And it's, again, one of those things where I've got really strong memories. And I think that's, a point where I really started seeing just the huge scope of what's out there. And this is not a Disney World vacation, and it's not a cruise where everything's curated. This was something very different. And everything about that experience has, I think, shaped me in some way. Going to Africa, and this was back in the early 90s, it's expensive at any point in time. And even back then, it was very tricky to do. And so I remember all the things that we did in order to try to economize, to save money. And, we gave up cable TV. We gave up going out to dinner. I spent my weekends rolling coins in the paper things, to take them to the bank, and we saved for about 2 years in order to be able to afford to do that trip, which was only about 3 weeks long.
Wow. That's
but it was incredible, just absolutely incredible. And over the years, and this is 30 years ago now. Again, I find all these connections back to some of the places that I visited when I was a kid. It's like, oh my gosh, my dad took me on that trip for showing me something different, giving me a different experience. There was also a little bit of selfishness on his part because he loves elephants and I do too, but he's like obsessed with elephants and he really wanted to see them in the wild and he was concerned about the way things are going and whether or not it would still be possible to see elephants in the wild for much longer. And so we went, and yeah, just so many things that you kind of open your eyes when you have experiences like that.
It's super, super powerful. And obviously it influenced you. That's why we're having this conversation today. I'm curious, do you have siblings as well? Were there others in the family okay, so here's the question I want to ask you, because I hear you discussing saving money. This stuff's expensive. When I was young, I remember smashing aluminum cans, so we could save up enough money to go to Disneyland,
Did that too. Yep.
So I can relate to that. But my question is this. If you'd had more siblings, do you think that would have reduced your opportunities to travel? Because it's one thing when you've got, mom, dad, and one kid to go to Africa. But it starts getting out of reach for families that have more kids and also just trying to keep everybody happy, and it's stressful. Traveling with one kid's a lot different than traveling with two kids. So do you think that if you'd had more siblings, that would have impacted your ability to go see these places?
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think that's not a reason to shut yourself off to travel. Right. I think it means that you adapt and figure out what you would do differently. And so I think that's one of the big things we can talk about is why do we travel? Why do we put so much? Travel is expensive no matter who you are. It's expensive. So why do we spend so much money traveling? Like what's the purpose of it? Do you really have to spend all that money to have the result that you want? And so if you're a family and you've got one child, you may be able to splash out on different things. If you're a family and you have several children, you might be able to get a very similar result by doing a different experience closer to home.
And it might be in the station wagon instead of
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important lesson to learn because I think for a lot of people, financial ability is a barrier to travel, and it shouldn't be that way.
I think it can be, but I also want to touch on this because, I'd heard somewhere somebody had said something like, if I want to know what you value, I'm going to look at your bank account and your calendar, right? Because people can say, I value family, but they spend money on, I could say any number of things, but where they spend their money and where they spend their time kind of maybe sometimes says otherwise. And I've met an awful lot of people that, oh yeah, because I travel, I'm like sickly passionate about it. And I meet other people and think, oh yeah, I like to travel as well. And you say, okay, well, when's the last time you went somewhere? Well, I really want to go. But they're driving, a really nice car. They got the nice house. They've invested in other things so they can talk about wanting to travel. And I'm not knocking them. I'm just the reality. And then you've got other people that will drive the, 77 Toyota Corona station wagon for 30 years so they can, but they've been to Africa. They've been to Asia.
Us. I mean, I've helped my dad push his old beat up car on more roads than I can count. When it breaks down. And that's how we were able to do it.
So then my question is, what do you think it was about your parents? Because there's plenty of other parents out there that are school teachers that have one child that for whatever reason don't travel. So what do you think? Have you analyzed your parents to figure out why were they like this and what made them different?
That's a great question.
We don't have to go into it. I'm just curious.
I like to think that I scrutinize my parents on a daily basis.
I know I do. We were talking about that right before I pushed the record button.
Yeah. Well, I think that in many ways I have to recognize that I had a really privileged upbringing. And that doesn't mean that we had tons of money because we didn't. But there were many people who had much less than we did. And, that continues to be the case. And so I think that there's always a combination of financial resources decision making, the knowledge that you have that you've learned from your own parents, that they've learned from theirs, things that we've learned in schools. There's
I think that you really touched on something there, because it's a lot of times it's what are we led to believe is possible and acceptable, socially acceptable. So if your parents grow up constantly talking about you need to go be a doctor so you can find a wife, so you can buy a car, so you can have a house, so you can, get a retirement, so you can create all these things, then you tend to either pursue that or feel guilty the rest of your life if you didn't pursue that. And if you've got parents that are like, hey, let's go, we're going to save up our money, we're going to go to hell with getting a new kitchen or a new bathroom in the house, we're going to put our resources towards going and do something, that sends the message to you that it's okay to value experiences over things. I think that's a big part of it, is that conflict between things and experiences. And I deal with it almost on a daily basis, because 4 years ago, I sold all my stuff and started traveling full time. And the amount of guilt and shame I had around that was huge. Because and my parents are great, but it's like, how can you do that? My son just the other day, Dad, you're so irresponsible. If you just stay here in Arizona, get a job, get a house and all that stuff, your life would be so much better, so much easier. So somehow he picked up a different message than what I'm trying to do. But so I suspect that's it. And it sounds like your parents, their parents were supportive and encouraged them to go do stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you do touch on something. There's a lot of cultural to it. I think something that spans many cultures is a very human thing, which is that doing things that are different is scary, and doing things that are customary is easy. So as a species, we are more prone to do things that are measurable, comparable, predictable, and don't challenge us too much.
Keep us alive, not to keep us
Yeah,
happy. Our brain is trying to keep us alive, not happy. And the chances of staying alive are better if you never leave the house.
yeah. And as we go through generation after generation, that's where we do start to see some disparities that pick up. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's something that I think many of us have to be aware of. That, I always say that I grew up with parents that didn't earn a tremendous amount of money. They were both educators. But at the same time, there were other things that we had access to. So there's like institutional knowledge. My grandparents went to college, which is not the case for many people, to have multiple generations of college educated people. And this did not make anyone rich at all, but it did give them the ability to be problem solvers. And that's something that I think is a challenge, because many times we're faced with opportunities that would require us to be problem solvers to take advantage of them. And if we don't have the skill sets to say, oh, I can figure this out. This is something unusual and unknown, but that's okay. I'm accustomed to that. I grew up in a place where we figure things out, and we know that there's a solution. We just need to find it. That's a privilege for people to be in that position. I think a lot of people do live in an existence where they have to do the tried and true thing. They have to get up and do that 9 to 5. They have to do the side hustle, because there's on such a thin layer of ice with breaking even, providing for their families. And so
Do you think
those of us who travel have to be aware that not everyone is able to do that.
so you mentioned specifically college education, and what popped into my head was, I suspect that for a lot of people, the biggest value they get out of college or university is that they leave their home. A lot of them, not always, but oftentimes they leave their home and they get out on the skinny branches. So like my daughter was living in Alabama with her mom and her stepdad. And when it was time to go to school, oh, you got to stay in Alabama, go tight or whatever. I don't know anything about college sports or anything, but she's like, you know what? I'm going to Wyoming. Like, my dad's from Wyoming, my grandfather's from Wyoming, my grandparents graduated from University of Wyoming. Just something about it. I'm not sure she would say it. Maybe she would now, she's older, but I suspect a lot of it was because nobody else was in Wyoming. She was going to go do her thing. And she went to the University of Wyoming. And there's a lot of people that, I guess where I'm going with this is it's not so much what they learn in classes, it's that they figure shit out. Pardon my French, but you said figure it out along the way. Like someone that picks up and goes halfway across the country to go to school and adapt to a totally new group of friends, or no friends, because you don't have any friends when you get there, and figure out, where am I going to stay? How am I going to get things for my room? How am I going to deal with money issues when I run out, whether that's call your parents or not, whatever. You're just working through a series of things that build confidence, where maybe the kid that stays home, and we've got more of that now with a lot of people staying at home longer, which is fine, but maybe they're hearing you need to go get a job, and so they go get a job, somewhere. I guess where I'm going with this is they kind of follow the path that's set for them, and maybe they don't build a lot of confidence because mom's always there, dad's always there. They didn't go far from home. So what do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I would just add no judgment because, for some people, they get a lot of fulfillment from staying close to home,
Yeah.
staying
Yeah.
close to family. I think the ultimate goal for anyone should be to figure out what is it that makes you feel fulfilled and happy as a person, and make sure not to exist in a blind spot. Like really think about that. What's going to make you happy? And if there's something missing, figure out how to get the tools to fix that. And there's so many things that I despise about things like social media and everything existing on the internet and things like that. But one of the positive things is that we now have access to more opinions and more tools and more resources than ever before. Now, the quality may be something that's debatable, but the reality is if you want to figure out how to do something, there's now ways to connect with people who are happy to help you. And so one of the things that I do as like an unofficial kind of side thing is I do coach some businesses because I worked for a successful business in Germany, and there's a lot of people that are starting up businesses and they say, I don't know how to even get started. I want to do this, but I don't know. And so there's a lot of people like me who do have some experience, and we're always excited to share that with other people because there's a lot of people out there who will say, hey, I want to do something different, but I don't know how. And so that's where we have to help.
There's the don't know how, but as a coach, what do you think is the thing that generally most people have the hardest time with? Is it figuring out the right accounting software? Is it, figuring out I mean, what's the thing that usually gets away for most people that say, I've been wanting to do this for years, but
basic things that all of us are victims of. Like none of us are susceptible to this. Change is hard and scary. Asking for help is really like difficult for people to do, particularly for people in the US. I grew up here. This is a success culture. And I think it's starting to change where we recognize that, people are people, we're not machines. And sometimes we need maintenance. And that's spiritual and psychological and mental. And I think a lot of people are exhausted from feeling like they're alone. And it's not necessarily alone like, I'm not around other people. I'm isolated like a hermit. It's more like, no, I'm starting to do a new business and it's different. And there's no one to talk to about it.
Yeah, and maybe their parents.
There's no one to just spitball ideas with or to have as a sounding board. I'm alone in this journey. And so that's where I think that it's starting to change and people are realizing there's a gap and we can't do everything ourselves. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay not to know how to do everything. And it's okay to do things that are different because just doing things the same way over and over and over again is self-defeating. Because the world moves on and we can either adapt and move with it, or we can just be like so committed to grabbing onto the old ways of doing things until there's nothing to grab onto anymore. So I'm a fan of people saying, I want to change. I need help to do so. We figure out things like marketing, the accounting, all of that kind of stuff. But the first thing is knowing you can't do everything yourself. And sometimes you need that partner, that thought partner, to just help you get over yourself and say, all right, I need help.
Yeah.
Here's
Yeah.
what I want the result to be. Here's the direction I want to go in. Help me figure out how to start moving in that direction. And then we work through the details as we go.
And I think it's mostly just somebody to give you permission to feel the way you feel, that give you permission to, you know what, this is like what you're doing is valuable. What you're doing is meaningful and you deserve it. You know, as I don't know, deserve, if that's a weird word, but that it's okay to want these things, because probably if they're holding back, if they just at 19 decided I'm going to go be a tour guide and open a tour operation business and they went out of the world and did it, that's great. That's awesome. Most of us have the scenario where, you know, the first time we mention, you know, I think I want to be a fishing guide, and your spouse is, well, that's the worst flipping idea I've ever heard. How are you going to do that? How are you going to support your family? Or you tell your parents you want to, you know, sell all your stuff and start traveling. Well, how are you going to do that? And, you know, there's so many voices out there, and I'm not knocking anybody. They love you and they're trying to support, you know, be there for you. But there's so many voices out there causing you to question yourself. And then you keep playing those voices over in your head because you keep hearing it. So you just need one, maybe, hopefully at least one other voice to say, you know what, you can do this. Other people have done this. You're smart. You're outgoing. You've got whatever going for you. And let's just figure out a way to do it. And first thing you got to do is quit listening to everybody else.
And you have to also, if you're the person listening to someone with their grand idea, I think we have to also learn to be better listeners and figure out, what is this? Why are they sharing this information with me? Are they looking for encouragement, or are they looking
for me
for
to pick holes
someone
in
to
it.
give? Yeah, are they looking for the voice of reason to back them away from the edge? You know what I mean? It's like if someone comes to you and says, I'm going to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel. Okay, then you might want to look to them and say, all right, I don't want to like kill their dream here if this is really their dream, but I don't want to just flat out tell them bad idea because
That's
maybe
all,
this is their dream.
but that's all
But
perspective. That's all
it
perspective.
is.
Because
So
to
we have
you
to
and
think,
I, we hear go over the falls in a barrel. We're thinking, oh, obviously that's dumb.
right.
But
But
someone else
maybe
might.
we can frame it in a way like, that's interesting. What kind of thought process have you put into the enormous G-force that's going to be sustained by the barrel when it hits the water at the bottom? And maybe as a way of not knocking someone's idea, but actually like pushing them in the thought process, and we might start to realize. And that's kind of an extreme example. I think I would be very careful before I encourage someone to do something like that. Sometimes I think people just want help to work through their thought process without an outsider necessarily telling them like a binary yes or no, good or bad kind of thing. It's more of like, hey, I have this idea, I want to talk about it. And so maybe we can help them have the conversation with themselves, because that's what they need to do to work through,
yes,
what's going to be the best thing for my business. What's the best thing for my family? Because every person is unique and every family is unique. And although businesses share a lot of regulations, each business is going to have its own dynamic as well. And so it's going to be really difficult for an outsider to just come in and tell you exactly what to do. That outsider can come in and help you question things.
mm-hmm.
And then you, as the insider in your business, can take that and figure out how to chew on it. Like, okay, this outsider just came in, they pointed out things to them that don't make sense, or they had some examples of other businesses that were analogous to what we're doing, or they had a completely different industry that was suffering through the same problem, and they shared some information. None of that is intended to be directive. It's more of, let me bring in some experience, some data points, some insight, and then let's work through this together, see what applies, and see what could actually make momentum for your business. But you as the business owner are the one who's determining the direction of that momentum. So that's always going to be on you.
And I think that also finding someone to bounce those ideas off that kind of has a similar mindset, value system. I'm not sure what exactly they're, but like, so for example, if I'm wanting to quit my job and build a tour operation business doing food tours in I'm not going to say Italy because there's too many. That's a whole nother conversation. But something like I'm going to quit my job and go be a tour operator. And the person that you're going to for advice has maybe worked for the government, for the last 35 years and has 10 more years they want to work until retirement and they've never traveled, then maybe that's not the best person to have that conversation with, because the perspectives are so different. So if you're the type, I want to be a tour operator, and you don't have tour operators around you, maybe go find a tour operator to have conversations with, somebody
or
that's
start working with one.
Yeah, exactly. It's someone that doesn't think you're crazy because you want to be a tour operator. Because if you're in a bubble, if you're living in a world where you don't have any of those people around you and you keep saying, I want to go be a tour operator, from their point of view, that's like going over the Niagara Falls in a barrel.
Exactly.
So find somebody that maybe, if you really want to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel, you probably need to find somebody who's done stunt work or at least can relate to that, I guess.
Exactly. And, we kind of came up with that crazy example, but the reality is people have done it. So this is not something that's impossible to do. It's something that the majority of people still think is crazy, but it is possible to do. And
Charles, I got to share this with you. There was
disclaimer: no one listening should try this.
I know, exactly. But actually, it's funny you brought that example up because my father was, he's a balloon pilot, and I grew up traveling with him, flying balloons. And
that's right. I remember we talked about that, and I mentioned that scared the crap out of me.
But he used to do one of the, went through this phase of we were doing bungee jumping out of the balloon because bungee jumping was popular for a while. So he was doing bungee jumping out of the balloon, and he decided that he wanted to offer a product called the Niagara Falls, where he took one of those big blue shipping crate or barrels and rigged it up to where he could get inside the barrel. This is so weird, and put the lid on and like run a bungee cord through a hole in the top of the barrel into a harness. And they would throw him off the basket in this barrel attached to a bungee cord. And he called that the Niagara Falls. So he thought this all out. He thought, man, people are going to want to do this until the first time he did it. And he decided, nope, that sucked.
Right. Market research is important.
So that's the father I grew up with, among many other weird things. So I'm like, I kind of have an excuse for being a little bit, adventurous and a little bit like, okay, I just get to go do my weird stuff. And my point there is having someone around that's kind of adventurous. If you want to go have adventures, have someone around that's adventurous, bounce some ideas off of them. They might still be able to rein you in on, or help you kind of think through the thought process a little bit. And that's what you can do as a coach, right? Are you coaching and working with tour operators?
Tour operators, yeah.
Okay.
Usually the smaller to medium-sized businesses that have fewer than 100 staff, usually they're just in one or two locations, and usually are facing some kind of existential question. These are usually owner-founder businesses, and many travel companies start with usually one passionate person or like a passionate couple who have some kind of destination or experience or a skill or an activity or something about which they're extremely passionate, and they want to share that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so many travel businesses start with this like really just raw human emotion of wanting to share, which is great. And successful businesses in the tourism space usually start that way.
Mm-hmm.
But then they run into the problem of, oh my gosh, we're growing. What do we do? And so that's where a lot of these businesses that are started by owner founders can start to run into some friction, because they either start growing faster than they're really capable of managing, or they decide they're more aspirational in the amount that they want to grow, but that growth track is beyond their skill set. Because the core of what they know is the passion around the experience that they're providing. And running a tour business does start to share other aspects of other businesses, which are, like you mentioned, what's the marketing, what's the accounting, what are the systems that are at play. And for a lot of people, those are a major time suck. For major drag, like why, if you're passionate about paddleboarding, why the hell do you want to sit there and talk about, should I use QuickBooks or should I use, That's
your
not what you
eyes,
want to spend your time
yeah,
doing.
your eyes roll back in the back of your head, and you know that you should be doing, you should probably have a bookkeeper or have QuickBooks or something. But yeah, it's like, that's not what you got into. And this conversation has come up so many times on this podcast. Anybody that's listened to this, that's heard other episodes, oh yeah, and we talk a lot about how do you um, make that work? Do you partner with somebody else who has that mindset, that is more interested in the operational aspects, or maybe some of that stuff? Because usually the person that starts it, they're one of those outgoing types, and maybe a little bit of ADHD or whatever's going on. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, I know that there's like all kinds of people that listen to this. And so if you are in the camp of like you're running a business and you're wondering, what do you do next? Like, should I grow? Should I expand? Should I hire people? Or if you are listening because you're thinking, yeah, I want to switch my career. I want to get into tourism. I want to leave my desk job and do something more interesting in travel. I think it all starts with thinking, what is it that you want? Like, as a
Mm-hmm.
person, what do you want? Do you want to be a guide and just give tours? Do you want to just work with families that are on vacation, small groups, maybe a student group every now and then, maybe a couple companies send people, and you want to work for yourself and you don't want to have to report to anybody and all that kind of stuff? That's important to know. If your goal is, no, I want to get into tourism because I think I've got a winning idea and I want to eventually take over the whole landscape and I want to start exporting this idea and replicating it and be in lots of different locations and grow, grow, grow. I think it's important to know that there's no right or wrong way, but it does determine setting expectations properly so that you can be happy. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with saying, I want to work for myself. I want to do everything in-house. I don't want the headache of working with other people. I don't want to deal with paying an accountant. I don't want to deal with paying for marketing. I get it. That's totally fine. Just accept that that will have some limitations with it.
Mm-hmm.
But the limitations also mean you have total freedom. You're working for yourself. When you decide you don't want to do it one day, you just don't do it. Like there's pros and cons. The other way, you might make a lot more money, but you're going to spend a lot more money as well. You're also going to have a lot more headache. You're going to have a lot more liability. Your phone's going to be buzzing all the time because of stuff, unless you start partnering with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So like you were saying, yes, you have to start partnering. It's great to work with a coach. Like, of course, a coach can help you like see the light at the end of the tunnel. They can help you make sense of the forest so that you can focus on what you're doing. But absolutely, an accountant is your friend. An insurance person is your friend. And a local lawyer who knows the laws applicable to your location and the locations of your guest is critical. So even if you don't work with a coach or someone like me, those three types of people: an accountant, a lawyer, an insurance person. I always tell travel business owners, make friends in those spaces. Have a relationship, because that way you can focus on your passion, knowing that if something hits the fan, it's going to be in one of those three areas. And you have a person to help you with that. So you don't have to approach every day with fear of saying, what if today's the day that something comes up in accounting that I don't know how to handle? I'm going to waste my whole weekend trying to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
That'll eventually take away from your passion and you will not be a happy person. And if that's happening, the quality of what you do is going to suffer. So have that person ready to go who can help you with accounting, with insurance stuff, with legal stuff. It'll really save you a lot of headache, and just it'll make your life so much more enjoyable. And your guests are they're gonna feel it. If they come and you and your staff are happy, it has such a huge difference in how the operation works.
I agree completely. And I want to reemphasize, I think the coach, we can use the word coach, or really what it is have somebody also in your corner that is interested in the same thing. Because the lawyer might not be super interested, might not be the type you're going to go have a beer with and talk about new rafting trips that you want to offer, or, the accountant may not be that person. But having someone in your world that is excited about it, that has some experience, that's able to, you can call it a coach, we can call it a battle buddy,
Mm-hmm.
an accountability partner, just somebody maybe to have like, hey, let's just do a call once a week and just have a conversation, because accountability is a big one. If
Yeah,
you're a tour operator, maybe you've got a
huge.
few guides working for you. Your guides are great. They're probably interested in the same thing. You probably have lots of conversations with them, but they may not be the person you need to have those one-on-ones with. Your guests are great, but you don't want to be spending, all your time with your guests. You just need somebody else that's outside of that world that you can, not outside, I shouldn't say outside of the world, but maybe it's
Yeah, but it's
outside of your
someone
immediate
who's
sphere.
going to be a real thought partner for you. And don't be afraid to look for a coach who tells you no on things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's important to have someone who's not just going to bolster bad ideas. You need someone who's going to help you work through your thought process. And the role of a coach is not to tell you exactly what to do, but is to help you organize yourself to figure out the best solution for your particular case. And if you find a good coach, that coach will not be afraid to put you in contact with additional people. I have seen a few folks that want to really own that relationship, and they're so afraid, like, I'm a coach and I want to control this person. Like, this is my client and all of that. I don't think that's the case, because none of us is an expert on everything.
A coach,
Like,
a
I
coach
can,
doesn't have to be, because
no,
here's the thing. I did some coaching. I did some coaching in the past as well. And I would explain to people, like, I could probably coach you to run a marathon. I've never run a marathon. I don't even like to run, but a good coach could coach someone to run a marathon, because it's not about, it's mostly about, why do you want to do this? What do you want to do? What's it going to feel like when you finish that marathon? Why is that important to you? Okay, so now what do we need? What do you need? Most runners probably know what they need to do. They need to get up in the morning and go running. It's not a matter of not knowing what they should do. So you say, okay, so, work with them. They set up their own training schedule. And then the coach basically, when you get on the call, you're like, hey, what did you commit to last week? I committed to 50 miles this week. Okay. Well, what did you actually do? I only did 40 miles. Okay. So talk to me. What got in the way? And it's just having that conversation, holding you accountable, helping you figure out what's getting in the way of you doing what you said it was, whether it was running or setting an appointment with a lawyer or hiring a psychologist or whatever, or whatever it
yeah,
is. So it's
yeah.
super valuable.
Absolutely. And it's helpful to have someone who's within the industry or has experience in the
It
industry,
is. Yeah.
because part of a coach is going to say, help you figure out how to talk with other people. For example, if you've got a kid and they're going to go buy their first car or something, you're going to say, all right, I want you to do this yourself. But when you go to the dealership, be sure to ask them, what's the mileage, what's the condition of the tires, like, you're going to give them some advice, say, like, okay, be sure to find out these things, now go do it yourself. And it's kind of the same thing with travel businesses as well, because you can say, go get yourself an accountant, and it's like, great, but it's like, no, go get an accountant and talk with them, find out how many times they work with international clients, find out if they know how to do EU VAT. See if they know how to walk you through reverse charge. See, and it's like, I don't know what any of that stuff is. And I'm like, yeah, and sometimes accountants don't either, because that's not what they do. But
Right.
you're going to do it because you're in the travel space, which means you're going to be located in one place, your clients are located in another. And sometimes, going back to that, like, big box booking engine, that money's coming through something that may be in a third country altogether, and that has major accounting implications for your business. And so it's important to work with not just any accountant. You need to have a conversation that qualifies them to work with your kind of business. And you may not consider these things, but as a coach, I can say, hey, really, like, kick the tires on this particular topic, because that will help you know how easy it's going to be for you to have a conversation with that person going forward. In my business that I worked in Germany, for a while, we worked with a great accountant, but after a while realized that we were overpaying a huge amount of stuff, because we weren't taking advantage of legal taxation regulations. And so we were paying for taxes that we didn't need to pay. And that's just because, tax situation is very complicated in any country. And then when you start doing cross-border accounting. It gets a whole new layers of complexity in there. And so there's just things that you learn and you adapt and you go from. And so when you partner with the coach that does know your industry, you kind of tap into all the mistakes that they've made in the past and the things that they've worked through with other clients, and can actually say, hey, I'm going to save you a bunch of time and energy here.
Yep.
Here are some questions. If they can't answer these questions, say, thank you so much for your time, but I got to move on. And it'll be so much of a time saver in the long run for you, and a money saver.
Yeah, I appreciate that you brought that up, because I used the coaching a runner as a kind of an example as for around kind of what coaching is, but you're absolutely right. I mean, if you're going to run a marathon, you probably be best if your coach likes to run and has some experience, maybe has run a marathon. So
Yeah.
but the same thing as a tour operator, somebody that's been through it, that's had some of those and probably painful experiences, and, learned things the hard way.
Yeah, we've all had them. And so part of that, that relates back to, don't be afraid to ask for help. It's also don't be afraid to make mistakes, because we've all made them in a variety of ways. And so I think that as more and more of us are getting connected, we're learning from each other and starting to share experiences about things that have worked really well, things that if we could go back in time, we would do differently. And so those are fun conversations for me to have with people. Starting a tour business or growing one that you already have is so rewarding. And I'm a firm believer that travel businesses are at the forefront of making a more equitable kind of world. I really do. And so we need to be helping each other to do that. There is space for a little bit of friendly competition, but there's a huge space for us to cooperate and collaborate with each other. We're one of the biggest industries in the world. When you put tourism related stuff together, we have to be at the forefront to push initiatives that are aligned with the values that we think are important. Like, we have to do that, and we have to do it together.
Which brings us to Painted Circle.
Yeah.
So let's discuss that, because we've discussed quite a few things, and I want to make sure our listeners have an opportunity to kind of understand, why did you start it? And I suspect some of it had to do with when you work in Germany. So just jump in wherever.
So after traveling as a kid, I left South Carolina. I moved to Washington, D.C. to go to university. And while I was there, I started working with international development. And I also studied during university in Berlin. And that was, again, one of those things of, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to Berlin. And so I just got on a plane and went to Berlin and went to university there. I had a back and forth existence for a bit between Berlin and Washington. And I lived in Washington for off and on, but for about 7 or 8 years in total. And then eventually moved to Germany. And when I moved to Germany, I said, all right, I'm going to take this kind of education that I have from university I studied both political science and also international development. And then I really enjoyed my time in Berlin when I was a student there. And I said, okay, I'm going to move back and I'm going to find a way to combine these two. And at that time, there was a relatively young tour company that was working in Berlin. And I was like, hey, this is going to be great. So I started working with them, and it filled many buckets for me. It was a small company, so it was a lot of fun to do. It was in a city that I loved. And so I loved that I could be out and in this city every day. It was working with people from all over the world. So we had guests from all over. That was fantastic. And it was talking about a topic that I felt passionate about. The history of Germany and of Berlin is unbelievable. And so much of our world today, we can trace back to things that have happened there. And there are so many lessons to learn. There's so many cautionary tales. And there's so many connections that we can find today that have, or let's say that there's so many situations that are happening today for which we can find examples in German history. And we can see, how are things worked out? What were the consequences? What happened? It's a really fascinating place. And, Berlin is a multifaceted place. Some people go there just for the parties and all that kind of stuff. But Berlin is a really consequential place politically, culturally, economically. And so it was really fulfilling to be part of that and to share that city and its legacy with guests from around the world. It was kind of an opportunity to say, hey, come here. witness this, know about what's happened here, and take this back where you're from and make sure that people know about it.
Right.
Our challenge with that company was working with travelers. They're on vacation. They want to have a good time, and they want to have fun. And we have to talk about Nazis.
Yeah.
It's a difficult thing to do, and it's difficult because we have to be respectful of the history. We have to be respectful and aware of the people who've suffered there, and we also have to make sure that we're running a business that people will find, hey, we had a good time on this. We had to really define what is having a good time. And for us, it was, how do we give people an eye-opening experience? And so that's what we did. And in the process of growing that business, we learned a lot. We learned about, how do we hire and train people? How do we recruit the right people? How do we cultivate a culture that's going to respectfully share this history? How do we grow ethically with kind of monetizing a relationship with very turbulent history? Like, where's the line? What's right? What's wrong? We went through all of this, and the reality is there's companies around the world that are facing the same thing, no matter where they are. If they're in Vietnam or they're in Japan and they're doing all kinds of tours and experiences, how do we do those businesses in a sensitive kind of way? We don't want to commodify people. We don't want to take advantage of cultures, and people are finding a way to do it.
Charles, so, I'm curious, were the local Germans, because I hear that, I completely understand that you don't want to commoditize. What's the word? Commodify. So an example that I'm curious, help me connect this, is, I spent a lot of time in Colombia, and there are people there that give Pablo Escobar tours, and there's people that sell T-shirts and stuff like this. But the vast majority of Colombians do not like that. They think it's disgusting that somebody would offer a Pablo Escobar tour. There's a little Pablo Escobar museum, and they get, very upset about that. I'm curious, in Germany, is that similar? Are there people there that really get upset by the idea of Americans coming there and taking tours, things like Holocaust museums and stuff like that? Do Germans respond to that? I mean, I don't know what the question is, but tell me.
I think I know what you mean. A couple interesting things about Berlin. Berlin is there's actually been a lot on the news recently about immigration in Germany. And, in many places in the West, there's a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment going on. And Germany acknowledges that it's challenged, but it is an immigrant country. Like, it has to be in order to function. And places like Berlin, you can really see that, because I'm not sure the exact statistic. It's has hovered around 1 out of every 3 people in Berlin is not German. So, to your point, how are tours like this received locally also has, like, what is the demographic of the local, and so we have to qualify that in some way. Germany, in the last couple of decades, since the fall of the Berlin Wall, has really marched down a path of transparency, or we should say, they aspire to be transparent in how they operate. As a result of that, locations, and very prominent locations in the city, are have been set aside as monuments or historical landmarks. In German, there's actually different words for memorial, like we would say in English. So like here you would say something like, I'm going to go to the Lincoln Memorial, or something like that. German has a few different words that come back to the meaning of, is this a location that makes me think? Is this a location that makes me honor something? Is this a location, is it something that commemorates something? So there's a lot of meaning behind how things are named, and there's many of those throughout the city. And so some of them are related to the Soviet history in the city after the end of the Second World War. Some are related to things that happened during Bismarck's time. And some of them are related to things during the Second World War, things certainly like the Holocaust Memorial, which of course has a very specific name as well. It's much more like direct. These are things that are in very visible locations. There's no hiding it. And so on the positive side of the spectrum, I think that culturally there is there's a connection to acknowledging the past. And so tours that are acknowledging the past is not stepping over a line. The line is already like well pushed to the side. The government buildings there are all made out of glass. And part of that is symbolic to say nothing's happening behind closed doors. You can view things. And one of the big highlights for tourists, if anyone's listening ever goes to Berlin, you can go to the Reichstag, which is the parliament building. And it's hugely symbolic because there's a dome on the top of it, and the dome is made out of glass. But if you visit it, you can actually go onto the roof of the building, and there's a spiral staircase that goes up to the very top of the dome. And when you're on that spiral staircase, you can look through the middle of it down, and you actually look into the chamber with the politicians working below. And the idea is that you don't only see them, but you as the people are above them.
Yeah.
And so that's something that's hugely symbolic. So in a place like Germany, tourism, as I think we would be talking about it, doesn't cross a line. It's in line with the way that people say, look, we need to acknowledge what happens here. The line, I think, is drawn when we start placing too much blame. Because the reality is most Germans today, they're not personally responsible for what happened during the Second World War. And many Germans today suffered quite immensely because of the legacy of the Second World War and then the division of the country afterwards. And so that goes back to this layer, like it's like a lasagna, of history that's there. And each layer has its own dynamics to it. And so when you go there as a tourist, going on a tour is kind of like having that coach, because it's going to help you make sense of this, very complicated history that's there. But no, I don't think it's a negative thing. The closest that we had is there's a memorial camp outside of Berlin that's called Sachsenhausen. And it was used as an internment camp during the war. And it was one of the earlier ones during the Second World War. Was used as almost like a testing ground to try to find policies, the systems and the setup and things that could then be exported to other concentration camps as Germany expanded. And it's still there. It's been turned into a memorial. You can go and visit it. And it's actually a big tourist draw for people to go there because it's one of the few that you can get to from downtown Berlin on public transport. And we had guests asking us like, hey, can you give us a tour out there? And for us, that's where we started to draw the line. And we said, we feel gross about making money showing that. But at the same time, we also didn't want to say, no, if there are people that want to learn about what happened there, we need to help them to do that. So our company actually established a nonprofit so that the nonprofit could operate the tours. And so we could still charge people to go. We could use that money to pay the guides so that they could actually still earn money and they didn't have to volunteer. And then anything else that was left over, we donated to that memorial so that it could fulfill its mission to exist. And so there's always workarounds to do things. And that's also another thing that's fun to work with businesses from a coaching standpoint is to figure out, again, what is it that you want? And part of that is, where are your limitations? Like, where are you going to give back into this tourism ecosystem? And, do you have values that you want to support with your business? And so that's one of the areas where I think we have so much potential because there's a tremendous amount of energy out there to do like good things, and say, look, people are coming here. We can shed light on things. And then maybe we can turn some of that travel money and that tourism industry money into something positive so that we learn from these things that have happened. And for things like what happened at this camp, we can make it human. It doesn't have to just be memorial. There are humans that were impacted there. And we can keep that knowledge alive so that it doesn't happen again.
I love that. That's a creative solution to, because I can imagine that dilemma. I just don't feel good about making money off of that. But on the flip side, people need to see it and people need to, people need to see it. Right.
Some people don't. Some people are in locations where they can't do solutions exactly like we did. And they may have to run a for-profit business. And I always tell folks, think about, is it important that you share this experience with people? And if it is, then it's important for you to make money. because that's going to help you to keep doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can decide what's within your values for what you do with your profits.
Because
And
if nobody
you can
does
be
it,
in control.
right? Because if nobody does it, everybody's like, well, I don't want to make money from that. Then this little place where some things happened that people need to know about is just going to disappear into the jungle or into the forest or whatever. Yeah. So, and what I hear you saying aligns a lot with my understanding of Painted Circle. So I want to make
I
sure we
look
do touch
for,
on that and as well.
yeah, yeah. So I kind of evolved from working with my one company in Germany, and now I'm working on pulling companies like ours all around the world onto one platform. And I call it Painted Circle for a variety of reasons. The idea is that many people who are running travel companies are doing it so that there's some kind of benefit. There's a community impact. They're working for some kind of sustainability project. They've got a big vision of how their company fits into kind of creating a better world through tourism. And so we're bringing them onto Painted Circle, which looks and feels a lot like the big box mass market sites like TripAdvisor or Viator. But we're creating a site that works more like a travel guide. So you as a traveler can come to our website, find these businesses that are really driven by some kind of purpose. And then we show you how to connect directly with them to make your bookings. And it seems so simple, you know, but the result is enormous. And this is where a lot of travelers don't really know what happens when they click the book now button on a big website. Let's say that you're going to go on a tour and you're like, oh, here's this cute little tour. I want to support these people. It's going to be $100 for me to go. Book now. I just supported this local business. You actually supported that booking website where you just made your booking. So they're going to take your money. They also take all of your booking data. So they're going to be remarketing to you to sell you more stuff. And then they will pass some of your money on to that local operator. There's rates that are negotiated. Usually it comes in the form of like a commission, like a sales commission. And typically those booking websites will take between 25 and 30% of what you spend, and they keep that. So when you do the math, it's really kind of scary. So let's say that you go on that tour that's $100 and it costs that company $60 to operate that particular tour because they have to pay their guide, they pay overhead. If you're doing something that requires a vehicle, they're paying that, paying insurances, all that. They might work out to $60 per person and you just paid $100. Well, they don't earn $100. They're going to get $75 from the booking company. So they've gone from a 40% profit margin to 15. Like just because you hit book on that website as opposed to theirs. And so we're creating kind of a more simplified system that says, I don't want to control the bookings. I don't want to control your spending, and I don't want to control all of your data. I want to show you places where you can travel and find really high quality businesses. And now I'm going to show you how to go directly to them. And that's what we're doing. And so we're starting this off as a huge community effort where we're inviting businesses that are aligned with this idea of keeping money local, of supporting worthy initiatives like sustainability, inclusion and belonging, all kinds of other like local impact projects. We're inviting them to Painted Circle and saying, just come onto our platform. We're creating this guide of impactful tour businesses around the world. And so as we're doing that, we're building out our network of businesses that most travelers will find really fulfilling to spend your money when you go on tour with them. And you're connecting directly to them. So you know that when you spend your $100, all of it is going to that person.
So that leads the question, and I feel compelled to ask Charles, like, we know that the Viators and TripAdvisors, you just explained to us how they make their money and kind of understand how the tour operator makes their money more if you book directly. But how does I think tour operators listen to this like, oh, I don't pay any commission. How the heck does Painted Circle make money? So what do you want them to know about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't make any money from the tour operators at all. There's nothing on our site that charges them, or they never get an invoice from me or anything like that. Here's what we've done. When we started bringing businesses onto this platform, onto Painted Circle, we realized that we're saving those businesses 25 or 30% commission that they would be paying through a reseller. So we realized we could harvest that savings in some kind of way that benefits the traveler. So all these businesses that are coming onto the site then say, okay, let me give a special offer for travelers. And sometimes that's like a 10% savings. Sometimes it's an additional experience, or sometimes it's an upgrade. And so every business on Painted Circle has come up with some kind of special offer like that. And we've packaged that together into a travel pass that travelers can get if they want it. So if you want to come to Painted Circle as a traveler, you can use our site for free. You can see the businesses that are on there and click through and book directly. But if you want to come to Painted Circle and say, oh, I want to go on this and I can save 10%, or I'm going to do this activity and I get, $200 savings off of my booking, you can do that by purchasing our travel pass as a one-time purchase, and it unlocks all of those special offers forever as you use our website.
Remember back in the day, I don't know, maybe they were not value packs, but like you could buy a booklet full of coupons.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Or like a community fundraiser where they would sell a card and it was good for a year at local businesses, stuff like that. Yeah.
Each business that was listed on the card had some sort of special deal.
Yeah.
Or you got the book with the tear out coupons, and the business community, they could participate in it if they wanted to. They didn't have to, but the money was actually coming from the consumer. Well, maybe a combination in those days, but so that's what I hear you saying. It sounds kind of like that. The customer or the consumer can buy something that has the promise of getting special discounts and deals, and the tour operator is not paying for it.
Exactly. The kind of unique nature of what we're doing is that it's all online. So you don't have to carry anything with you. You don't need that physical book. It also, from a practical standpoint, from the business's side, it also means that they're not locking something in stone. Right. So they can actually change those offers over time, and
like every day. Almost, right? Yeah.
Yep. And that's a great thing, because a lot of businesses, every season they'll have different offers that they do to take advantage of changes in their environment, changes in the season, all that kind of stuff. And so it's great that they can actually update those as they go, which is great. The other thing that's unique about what we're doing is it's not a subscription. We've made it a one-time purchase to get this travel pass, and then you have it forever. And part of that is I've been told that's self-defeating, and I get it, because we started off talking about doing things that are different, and people always say, do it this way, this is the tried and true way. And people have also told me, you got to make it a subscription, charge people like $20 a month, that kind of thing. And it just doesn't align with the vision of what I'm trying to do.
Right.
My goal here is not to make money off of people traveling. It's to help people spend their money more ethically when they do travel. And we can incentivize people to do so by offering this travel pass.
Because if they buy it, they're probably going to book their experiences through partners of Painted Circle or members or whatever. And if it's for life, then they could potentially continue doing that indefinitely. Where if it's a subscription, the subscription runs out.
They have to pay for it again and again.
They have a tight month where they're like, I need to go through and cancel some of these subscriptions. They cancel the subscription, and then, and then you never see them again, maybe.
Yeah. And, part of it is also really influenced by our own financial journey as a couple as well. And so we're part of the group of people working for financial independence, and how do we live very frugally so that we spend our money on experiences as opposed to things. And one of the things that we try to avoid is paying for subscriptions for things that don't really add continuous value to our
Right.
lives.
Right.
And so I didn't want to create something that I myself would not pay money for,
So is
So
this
I
is
would
this
want
like
to.
Dave Ramsey approved this approach, or
That would be something if he did. I don't know, but I crunched the numbers and it's like, yeah, our goal is to make enough money that we can support and grow our platform at a rate that is sustainable for us. That's the goal. The goal is not to replace TripAdvisor. I think TripAdvisor is a great company. They do a lot of positive things for businesses. And for many travelers who are just getting into travel, that's the way to go. You find the biggest variety of things that are there. They've got literally hundreds of thousands of things that you can go and do. When you travel, book through them if that's what you want to do. But there's a growing number of people who are getting to be a bit more discerning with when they travel. And that doesn't mean that they're looking for like more and more luxury. It means that they're becoming more and more aware of the consequences of what they're doing. And so as people realize, oh, if I book a trip through TripAdvisor every year, and every year I'm spending $1,000 on a trip, over 10 years, that means that I've given TripAdvisor nearly $3,000.
$3,000.
It's
Yeah.
just like, that's a lot of money that you're giving to a website that isn't in the communities that you visit. They don't employ anyone who gives tours. Like, they're a marketing agency, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we as a traveler need to know, okay, well, do we want to spend our money on marketing or do we want to spend our money on impact? And that's where we're coming in and saying, no, we can do it on impact.
Yeah, and on that guide and that person that you're going to actually be with, right? Because you book a tour on TripAdvisor, and then you get there and you spend the time with the person. You create the connection with the person, and at the end of that tour, wouldn't it be nice to feel like, yeah, my money went to this person and not a tech company equivalent to a Zillow or those bigger companies that are out there. We've touched on so many things, but we've got a variety of listeners as well. So I wanted to just personally say this to our listeners. If you're a traveler, click on the link in the show notes. Go take a look, right? Whether you use the website for free or you want to, explore the possibility of, you said, the travel pass, right?
Yep.
And we've got tour operators that are listening to this. If you feel an alignment and connection with Charles, which I can't imagine how you don't, if you've listened to the episode this long, click on the link, go take a look, book a call with Charles, see if this makes sense for you guys to get listed. He just told you it doesn't cost you anything. And I know I see every day in the social media groups, people are like, how do I find more direct bookings? How do I don't really, these OTAs are cutting into my profits. How can I get more? Well, if you're still listening to this, you just learned one way. So reach out. We don't have any big OTA listeners, probably. I don't know. Maybe we do. If we do, reach out to me directly. I'd love to have a conversation with you. But Charles, what else do you want to share with our listeners real quick before we wrap up?
I would just share, be excited about tourism. I think that no matter where you are in the world geographically, or where you are on like a political spectrum or a financial spectrum or anything like that, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there. But if you put any value in what I say, as someone who talks on almost a daily basis with business owners around the world, there is a huge amount of positivity and optimism about what we can do in tourism. And I think that what we do in tourism can affect the greater world as well. And so get excited about travel, whether you are designing it and operating it, or whether you are consuming it as a traveler. Get excited about it. And then get excited about the fact that you can have control over your impact. So whether you're running a business and you want to do it your way, or you are about to spend money on travel and you're now scratching your head saying, well, yeah, I can do something that doesn't cost me any more money, but it ends up having a better impact. You can take control back of saying, yeah, I want to support what I want to support, and I don't want people to be like extracting money out that I don't know about. Like, you can be in the driver's seat on that and feel good about travel. There's a lot of talk of, what's the impact of this? What's the carbon footprint? All important things for us to do. The biggest risk is for us to stop traveling. So we can start traveling more sustainably, more ethically, but the important is we need to continue traveling, and we need to put value on what is it that we get from travel. It's about human connections. It's about learning things that expand your mind. It's about recognizing that travel is when we can continue to learn new things, have new experiences, expand ourselves as people, get to know other people, and be less afraid of the world that's outside of your four walls. Like, this is all very positive. And along the way, let's support businesses who are working on that carbon footprint and who are working on income inequality and who are working on social justice. We're going to support those things along the way because now we're working together to be more efficient with how people spend their money. And we're going to stop wasting it on marketing, and we're going to start creating more impact.
Very well said. Charles, thank you so much. Really impactful conversation, and appreciate you taking time out of your day to share it with the audience. And just good to see you again. Let's do it again soon.
I look forward to it.
All right. Thanks, Charles. You have a great day.
You got it.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.